My mom chose my toxic stepsister over me and kicked me out. Now, I got engaged, and my fiancé's company dropped her husband. She blames me. I, 26F, had been engaged to my fiancé, whom we'll call Jeff, 26M, for approximately 2 months. I met him 4 years ago on a dating app, and we've been inseparable since. Jeff and I are soulmates. He is the only person in my life who has never disappointed me. I have not had an easy life. My parents divorced when I was 2 years old. My father abandoned us without looking back. He paid child support, but that was it. He never bothered to come and see how I was doing. To be honest, my mother, 48F, was not a terrific mother either. When I was younger, she was more focused on other activities than on raising me. I was basically reared by nannies and babysitters. When I was a little older, my mother was quite young, and her priorities were very different. She didn't care much about becoming a mother and spent most of her time with friends or on dates. She was an outgoing socialite who had no time for me. Even in terms of her career, she was not taking her work seriously. She was a freelance artist who made good money every month, but she didn't have to worry about me since she had child support checks coming in to cover everything. I hate to say it, but if it hadn't been for the child support, I'm very sure she would have kicked me out a long time ago. She was never very devoted to me, and I suspected she was waiting for me to mature so I could leave her alone. Then, when I was around 13, she began seeing my stepfather. My stepfather, Matt, 50 million, has a daughter around my age. We'll call my stepsister Jess. When they initially started dating and my mother brought his family home to introduce us, she advised me to be on my best behavior since this was very important to her. Now, Mom had brought home boyfriends dozens of times before, but she had never been concerned about how I behaved. She would generally just tell me that she had guests coming over, and I would use that as a cue to go into my room and stay until they went. But this time, I had the impression she was serious about the person, otherwise, she would not have been concerned about my actions. To put it another way, if she wasn't serious about Matt, she wouldn't have worried about my presence in the house at all. The first time I met him and his daughter, they were relatively kind to me, and it was a pleasant introduction. I had no idea what was going to happen to me following that initial meeting. Soon after, he began to visit more frequently, and it seemed as if they had almost moved in together. I didn't mind it. It wasn't bothering me in any way, so I had no need to worry about them as long as they allowed me to go on with my life. It remained that way for a long time. They were practically living together, and Jess would occasionally visit as well. Her mother was still a part of her life, therefore she spent half of each month at her mother's house. Initially, people were either polite to me or ignored me. I was fine with that because I didn't really care for any of them. I didn't really care about my mother, so it was tough for me to care about anyone related to her. All I wanted was my own peace and quiet, which I enjoyed for a while. But then they decided to make it a permanent relationship and move in together. Now, I wouldn't have cared, but my mother informed me that now that they were moving in together, I would have to start sharing my room with my stepsister. I refused to do that because it was my room. It had been my room my entire life, and it was the one thing that gave me calm. In that house, I had my own private area. I was not going to give up my freedom by sharing a room with someone I barely know. When I told my mother that I was not going to share my room, we had a heated quarrel. She threatened to kick me out of the house if I did not do what she asked. I was 14 years old at the time, and despite my youth, I was aware of the law. I felt compelled to since my mother was the type of person you couldn't truly trust. It's also plain basic logic, and I knew Mother couldn't send me out until I was an adult, or she'd face legal consequences. So I informed her that I knew she couldn't do it and that she was faking. She was frustrated, but she had to let me have my room and chose to convert the basement into Jess's room. It wasn't a very horrible place to be. It wasn't as nice as my room, but my mother worked hard to make it more appealing and livable. By the time she was finished, it looked as good as any other room in the home, so I had no idea what the big issue was. But for some reason, that's when Jess started disliking me. It could have had something to do with the fact that on the day she moved in with us, my mother gave them a house tour and made it clear to everyone that Jess had to live in the basement since I wasn't ready to share my room. I didn't understand why she would make such an announcement, and I still can't think of a rationale. Perhaps she intended to make me feel bad by stating it in front of Jess, but all it did was make me feel strange and uncomfortable. It made me feel embarrassed for her, but I didn't feel bad about putting my foot down. Or perhaps she simply enjoyed drama and wanted Jess to know that I had refused to share my room with her, which would undoubtedly lead to difficulties between us. Jess did not appear to be the type of girl who would tolerate something like this. My mother was correct. Jessica refused to let it go. After that day, she began treating me as an adversary. She would still spend half of the month with her mother, but the days she would be living with us were excruciatingly difficult for me. She was a threat to society, and she had a personal vendetta against me. She was frequently nasty to me and made horrible statements about me right in front of my face. To give you an example of what she would say, she once told me that the reason my father left my mother was most likely because of me. Then she laughed, as if it were hilarious. She would make fun of my appearance because I was slightly fat at the time. She used to make fun of me at school for no apparent reason. Jess had a huge clique of mean females at school, and she would never miss a chance to bully me with her friends. Earlier, she and her pals would simply ignore me, which I loved. She and I were never friends, but that was vastly preferable to being her enemy. The saddest aspect was that I had done nothing to her. She was simply offended that I did not want to share my room with her. It was a ridiculous cause to hate me so much and try to ruin my life. My room was my safe area, and with a mother like mine, I don't think anyone can blame me for wanting my own space. Besides, if any of them had ever made an effort to get to know me, I could have shared my room with her. But she was a stranger to me, and I didn't feel comfortable giving up my independence for her. I never complained to my mother or Matt because they were aware of the situation and it was meaningless to do so. They didn't care. I might be bullied my entire life, and they would still turn a blind eye since I was not important to them. So I had to put up with it and let her trample all over me. I would fight back periodically, but I quickly realized that it only escalated the conflict. Our parents would intervene, and I would be grounded because they despised me. She would constantly cry a little to get out of trouble. But I couldn't cry on command like her, and I wasn't as manipulative. So I'd be the one who was punished for my poor behavior and advised to start treating Jess like a sister, while she got away with it and I had to face the consequences. It was a miserable place to grow up, and I despised my existence. So when I was finally kicked out around my 18th birthday, I was relieved more than anything else. I had put up with my family's crazy for years before being kicked out, and it only became worse over time. Jess continued to be a nightmare to deal with, and our parents continued to back her without questioning the legitimacy of her actions. In 4 years, she had managed to turn our whole high school year against me, and I had just a few friends who would even talk to me. Everyone else despised me because she did, and that was sufficient justification. It had taken a toll on my mental health, and I was battling to keep up in all areas. I had acquired a lot of weight from binge eating, and it had severely changed my appearance for the worst. I was overweight, acne-prone, and had pretty awful hair. I was also trying to maintain my grades. So not only did I look horrible, but I also appeared to be dumb to everyone else. I had nothing going for me and was at an all-time low. Things at home were no better, as I still had to deal with Jess and my parents. My mother had grown increasingly irritable and would continually compare me to Jess, despite the fact that she was the one who had made my life so much worse than it had been previously. Things were terrible before my mother married Matt and they moved in together, but not as horrible as they are now. Yeah, it was terrible that my mother didn't care about me before, but after her marriage to Matt, I went from the frying pan to the fire. She progressed from not caring to intentionally making me feel horrible about myself, and it felt as if I was also living with mean females at home. It was very clear to me that Jess was the daughter my mother had hoped for. Instead, life had dealt her the wrong hand, and she was stuck with me. I know they both wanted nothing more than for me to leave, and to be honest, I did too. My mother and Jess despised me, but Matt didn't care. I have no relatives to speak of other than my mother because my grandparents did not communicate with us. I had never known my father, and I knew nothing about my other grandparents. I actually had nowhere to go, and I felt awkward approaching my friends for assistance. So I had to fight it out and stay with my mother to ensure that I had a roof over my head and food to eat every day until I reached 18. But then, a few weeks before my birthday, an incident occurred, and I was expelled out the same day. It was a weekend, yet I remember it like it was yesterday since it was one of the most terrible and stressful days of my life. We had both recently graduated, and she had begun hanging out with a bigger circle of folks. She had a buddy whose brother was in his senior year of college, and she was dating her brother. So she and her friend would hang out with his pals, who were all older than us. I understood exactly what they were up to, but I didn't think it was worth bringing it up with my parents because, with my luck, it would only backfire. So I never told anyone that she'd started drinking. And, while I couldn't prove it, I knew she was smoking pot and whatnot. I was never interested in any of it because, first and foremost, I never had friends who were cool enough to have access to drink, cigarettes, or drugs. Second, I was already suffering with my weight and academics. I didn't need to add drink or drugs to the mix, I already had plenty on my plate. But that day, I believe I left my room unlocked before going for a shower. The next thing I knew I heard a banging on the bathroom door, and my mother was yelling at me, insisting that I come out right once. I had to rush and put on my clothes so I could see what she was talking about. When I got out of the shower, my mother, Matt, and Jess were waiting in my room, all with serious expressions on their faces. My mother took out a bunch of empty beer bottles from beneath my bed, and even more incriminating, there was a giant plastic baggie containing, I'm not sure how many grams of weed. My parents were unaware that it did not belong to me or Jess. I believe she had planted it in my room when I was not there and then informed my mother. They began flipping out and yelling at me about what a terrible person I was. She didn't just yell at me about the drink and drugs, she also started venting about how I was a complete disgrace to them. She protested that I ate all the food. She stated I was a waste. She was convinced that I would never do anything worthwhile in the future and would simply continue to live with them and spend their money. I attempted to explain multiple times that none of it belonged to me and that I had no idea how it ended up in my room, but she didn't believe me. She lost it when I suggested that Jess might have planted it in my room to get me in trouble. She began yelling at me about how I was always jealous of her and that I would never be as good as her at anything, which was why I was attempting to shift the blame. I was crying uncontrollably by that point, but she didn't seem to care and proceeded to rant at me. After some while, she stopped shouting at me and told me I needed to leave. I had no idea what she was talking about, so I asked her where I was heading. She told me she didn't care where I went, she just wanted me out of the house because she was tired of dealing with me. When I refused to go, she threatened to call the cops on me. She added that because I was almost 18, they would treat the drug allegations very seriously. She informed me she did not want an addict living with her and consuming all of her money and resources. I had to watch out for myself now since she was tired of pretending to be a happy family with someone who deserved nothing. I was pleading with her not to force me out because, while I wanted to leave, I knew I had nowhere to go and didn't have enough money on my own. But my mother didn't care. She informed me that if I didn't leave within that day, she would phone the police and report me herself. I was surprised that she could be so cruel, and even more so that neither Matt nor Jess complained about it. They were literally going about their day as if nothing was happening. After a lot of crying and begging, I finally started packing my belongings. I would gladly choose to live on the streets over being arrested for drug possession. I finished packing by the evening, and as I left the house, no one said goodbye, and I never looked back. I went to the park and sat on a seat for a few hours, but it got pretty cold. So I decided to go over to a friend's apartment and spend the night there, hoping they would let me. I went to my best friend Amy's house and asked if I could stay with her for a few days. She already knew how my parents were, so I didn't need to explain much to her. When I told her about what had happened that day, she was horrified. She said her parents could help me if I allowed them. I'd always urged her not to tell anyone about how my parents treated me, including her parents, because I wasn't sure if anyone would believe me. I guess I felt awkward revealing the sensitive information about my life with others. But that day, she compelled me to inform her parents, who were as appalled as Amy was. They called my mother and attempted to speak with her, but it didn't help, and she was quite unpleasant to them. So they recognized that talking to her would not make things any better. Then they did something for which I am grateful beyond words. They promised me I could stay with them for as long as I needed to and that they would assist me. They were wealthy, so money was not an issue, and Amy adored me, so she was willing to share a room with me. I spent the following few years living with them and attending community college, which was the only place I could get accepted due to my poor grades. I began working and accumulating money to buy my own place, but Amy's parents made sure I never felt pressured to leave their home and made me as comfortable as they could. Then, roughly 3 years ago, I finally acquired enough money to move out. I was proud of myself, and I was also grateful to Amy and her parents. I honestly could not have done it without them. Even on the day I moved out, they were the ones who helped me settle into my new home and informed me that I was welcome to return whenever I wanted to visit or even live with them. That was the turning point in my life. By then, I'd shed a lot of weight and my health had improved significantly. I felt and looked better. I was also generating enough money to support myself and had put in enough effort to improve myself. So I decided to start dating as well because I wanted to marry someday and needed to start searching. I met a couple of guys before Jeff, but it usually fizzled out before it could get serious. After meeting Jeff, I fully understood why. It was because Jeff and I were intended to be together, whereas the other guys I met before him were only there to have fun. When we first started dating, I had no idea he was wealthy and the heir to his father's firm. I just liked him because he was humorous and cute, and he appeared to like me as well. After a few months of dating, he informed me about his family, and I understood they owned a restaurant chain, which he would inherit in a few years after his father retired. Many people may believe that learning how wealthy he was changed things for me, but I simply regarded him as the same person I had known before. That information made no difference to me. I still loved him as much as I did before. We moved in together after approximately a year of dating, and he had introduced me to his family a few months earlier. Everyone in his family liked me, and we got along great. Everything was absolutely perfect. So, when he recently asked if I wanted to marry him, I knew the answer right away. We've been engaged for 2 months now, and things are going great. But then, around 2 weeks ago, I got an email from Jess. We haven't spoken in almost 8 years, and I haven't heard from my family since I was kicked out. I had no idea why she would contact me now, especially to make amends. I believe enough time has passed, and neither of us cares enough to try to mend the problem anymore. So when I received that email and understood she was reaching out to me to apologize for all that had happened in the past and admit that she had been a complete nightmare, I was perplexed. She admitted to placing stuff in my room to get me tossed out since she disliked me for no reason. I had no understanding why she was revealing all of that so many years later, and I sensed something was wrong with the situation. The timing was further suspect because I had recently gotten engaged, and I knew she must have known about it. I had mentioned it on social media, and we attended the same high school, so someone must have told her about it. Everything felt odd, so I started to investigate. As a result, I discovered that the man Jess was married to also owned the company that supplied plastic containers and other items for takeaway orders to Jeff's restaurants. It was easy for me. All I had to do was create a phony profile and stalk her. From there, I went to her husband's profile, where he disclosed everything about his work in his bio, so it was a simple process. I already knew a lot about Jeff's business because we had planned to run it together after his father retired, so I was already learning the ropes. When I realized this was the individual he was dealing with, I immediately alerted Jeff. Now, over the past few years, I've done my best not to think about my previous life since I just wanted to go on. So I didn't follow anyone from my family online, and I told my friends not to tell me anything about them. I had no idea Jess was already married and had been for a few years. But when I discovered that her husband was actually interacting with us, Jeff and I decided to cancel our arrangement. It was already costing us a lot of money, and I don't think I'd ever do business with that woman again. Jeff also informed me that the quality of the things delivered by her husband had reduced significantly since the beginning. They were considering dropping him as a supplier anyhow and were in talks with another guy who offered lower prices and better products. So, last week, a few days after I received Jess's email, Jeff decided to meet with her husband and cancel their contract. But, for some reason, Jess believes I did this on purpose to get her back, and she has been accusing me of it in her emails and social media posts. We haven't spoken in about a decade, but she still believes I am carrying a grudge against her. Which I may be, but that is not the true reason her husband lost our contract. She posted a few days ago that many of her clients had already dropped them, and this was the final straw. But she maintains that I did it out of spite, and that this was really unprofessional of us. She tagged our Facebook page in her post, and things have gotten pretty ugly. I feel awful for her because, according to her message, she and her husband have been losing business left and right. Okay, I'll admit that some of this was personal, but much of it was business as well. I doubt Jeff and his father would have dropped her husband as a supplier based only on my word. Nevertheless, I feel awful for her. I'm not sure if I should have made my fiancé quit working with my estranged stepsister's husband. Update 1. Okay, so Jeff has spoken with his father's lawyers, and he believes we did the correct thing. So we're going after them legally and asking that they remove that message. We are also filing defamation charges against them because the guy charged us a bomb and delivered things that fell short of our expectations. If we could obtain a better offer somewhere else, we'd obviously go there. It's just a coincidence that Jess is married to the guy who runs that firm. Instead of improving their company's operations, she chose to trash us on social media. It's stupid that I allowed myself to feel horrible for her after everything she'd put me through. But you guys truly opened my eyes, so I appreciate that. Many of you have been quite supportive, which I appreciate. Thank you so much for your comments. Update 2. So Jeff and his father filed a slander claim against Jess and her husband a few days ago. We'll meet with a court-appointed mediator in a week, maybe. But in the meantime, my mother has taken it upon herself to protect her poor little stepdaughter yet again. It is so silly. I feel like I am back in high school. But, happily, I'm not back in high school, so I can simply disregard what they say. Unlike then, I don't need to be in my mother's books to get a roof over my head. So she may cry all she wants about it, but nothing will change. She has been attempting to contact me for the past few days, ever since Jess was served, but I have simply blocked her and gone on with my life. I don't need that type of negativity around me. I am engaged. I'm going to marry the guy of my dreams, and I don't need her or her insane stepdaughter back in my life. Update 3. Hey, so let me quickly fill you in. First, we won the defamation lawsuit. It wasn't even that difficult because my father-in-law's lawyers are absolute sharks, and they killed her and her husband. So, maybe they'll focus more on their business now and meet their clients' expectations. They had to pay for what they stated, and we were able to strike an agreement. So that's over, and we can finally devote all of our attention to preparing our wedding. It's quite thrilling, and I can't wait to get married to Jeff. As previously stated, he is my soulmate, and I have waited a long time to find someone like him. Now that I have him, I will never let go. I have 2 weeks to escape my controlling and abusive husband before he returns from a business trip. Throwaway account as my husband and in-laws are following my main. I, 29F, have been married to my husband, 30M, who I'll call Alex. Alex and I met in college during our freshman year. We started off as just friends and got married 7 months ago. I've gotten along with his family, but we aren't super close, but we're friendly enough. The problem is that Alex has begun to make me incredibly uncomfortable. Firstly, he's begun to ask me who I'm meeting with, where, what we plan on doing, how long every single time I leave the house without him. At first I just thought he was being protective and a good partner just in case something happened, but then he started checking my phone after the visits, vetting and researching each of my friends as well. He also has been pursuing me to link my bank account to his, as he's in charge of the finances when he was perfectly fine with keeping them separate before. We fight about it almost every day. Finally, yesterday, when he was preparing to go on a work trip for 2 weeks in California, he demanded I wear a tracker so he could keep an eye on me while he's gone. I can't do this anymore. I feel like I'm suffocating, and his family, who I've spoken to about his worrying behavior, just said he's being careful and protective as a good husband should. I need to gather my things together and find a way to be gone before he gets home without tipping him off. He's always threatened that if he ever found me cheating on him, he'd turn in divorce papers the same day. He keeps a filled-out copy on his desk. I'm going to submit those the day I leave, but there's so much to do. Bergen, finding a new place to live, seeing if my job has any transfers available, packing and moving in 2 weeks. His return flight is on May 11th, so I need to move quickly. I'm posting here because I don't have any close family, and I can't risk dragging my friends into this as we share the same friends. I just needed a place to vent and ask if anyone has any advice on the easiest and safest way to do this. Edit. Oh my god, you guys are amazing. I never even thought to not use his divorce papers. I'll check for cameras before I start any packing or prepping. I may also shred his divorce papers just in case and look into getting a lawyer for myself. I'm in a no-fault divorce state, that much I remember, which will help. I'll update again when I know more. The tracker he wants me to use is a small clip to put on the belt or waistband. I'll wear it unless I'm going or doing something related to me leaving. No pets yet, thankfully. Update 1. So I've gotten a lot of support and helpful advice along with questions I thought I should clarify before I proceed with the update. Some asked why I'd be hiding things from Alex regarding going out and who I'm meeting with. I don't, and I have nothing to hide. However, when he begins to double-check everything I tell him with the other people there, right down to each person I talk to and what I said. Did I send any text messages? Did I order food? How much did I eat? That's when it started to feel like I was slowly being pushed into a corner. It didn't start that bad, but gradually grew worse over time. All of the Reddit subs my in-laws' families are part of are related gardening and DIY, so I highly doubt they'll see this. If so, by the time they do, I'll hopefully be gone. I talked about my job and explained things to my manager. And they promised to look into openings in other states to see if they could get me into one. They'll have an update on that in 3 days. I trust that my bank account is secured, considering he's tried to get into it before and failed. I found one camera in the kitchen, another in the living room, and one in our bedroom. As such, I've left them in place for now and done all other planning, either in the bathroom pretending I'm taking a bath. I'm honestly staying away from the domestic violence services as my sister-in-law is unfortunately higher up in those, considering she volunteers there, and I have a feeling if I did show up there, they would know in a heartbeat. I can't look for apartments until I get the update from my work, but either or I'm still gonna be leaving the state. The day before I do, I will be changing my number carrier and wiping my laptop and all of his electronics before I do. I've met with 2 lawyers so far and had them look over the paperwork. My husband had prepared and both said that it did have some clauses in it. That could have caused me some trouble down the line. What alarmed all of us was the fact that several of those clauses dealt with future children, and not as a hypothetical. Like several hair suggested, I have a feeling he fully intended on getting me pregnant to keep me trapped and tied to him. There are 3 other locations. my job could send me to, and I have. As a precaution, I began looking into all 3 cities and housing in the areas. Just in case one of those, this is the one they send me to. Even if they don't have an opening that they can push me into, then I will just have to quit, move and figure things out on my own. I have enough money to live and survive for a few months until I can pick up another job. Unfortunately, all of our friends are mutuals and would likely be unaware of the consequences of saying or sharing anything I do or say with my husband. I don't have any surviving close family, and obviously my in-laws are not a good resource to rely on. I am on my own, unfortunately, other than the wonderful bonds I've begun to make here. I will update again if I get more information or something else happens. Otherwise, all updates when my work gets back to me. I do plan on leaving before he returns though. Just to make sure that I'm not anywhere near here at that time. Update 2. Good news. My work has an opening I qualify for that will not only shift me across the country, but also comes with a salary increase as well. I've started telling my in-laws and friends that I'm planning a surprise outing for when my husband gets back for just the 2 of us. This way, people don't give me odd looks if they see me out and about. I've even gone as far as asking Mel to show me his favorite recipes. Meanwhile, I found a moving company that, while small, is willing to work in a storm. The reason is in 5 days, we're supposed to get hit with a large storm front. I plan to shut off the breaker and say we lost power if he asks, just as several people here suggested, and even send him a short clip of the storm. I will have all of my stuff moved that afternoon, and I will be flying out once the weather has cleared enough to do so. I have a lawyer who will push my divorce through, and I've filled out the necessary paperwork so that I don't have to be here for it. I'm not suing for assets or alimony, and I've shredded his divorce papers as well. I've set up a cheap phone plan through Cricket until this is all said and done, at which point I will find a new carrier, number and phone. This one is being wiped and left behind. My laptop is provided by my work, and the IT department inspected it thoroughly and it was clean, thankfully. No other electronics aside from my laptop and new phone will be coming with me. If Alex needs to talk to me, he can do it through my lawyer. Not sure if anything else will happen. My fingers are crossed that he doesn't think anything's amiss until after I leave, and I'm not turning the breaker back on when I do. He can when he gets home. My work is covering the plane ticket, so that at least is one expense I don't have to finagle in. Update 3. It's been a busy week, but I've gotten so much done. Firstly, I am now out of the house and am currently in a hotel while I look for an apartment. It's a big city, bustling with people no matter where you look. We had a pretty bad storm system hit back home that actually lasted 2 days. High winds, thunder, lightning, and even hail everywhere. I didn't take much from the house: my documents, clothes, and important sentimental items. I left all of the furniture and electronics behind. I cleaned the house top to bottom and took pictures on my phone so he couldn't claim I damaged anything when I left. My lawyer has already started divorce proceedings, and my husband will be served on the 8th. His plane is due to land early in the morning, and the sheriff will be there at the house waiting for him. He is very much about public appearances and reputation. My lawyer will be calling him as well to inform him that I am more than willing to air out everything to the public about his actions if it means securing my freedom from him. I will go to court as long as I must to get this pushed through. I haven't told our friends or his in-laws yet. I will do that while he is on the flight to prevent him from getting wind of it before he's handed the divorce papers. I will be calling around and explaining why we're getting divorced, to try and prevent him from twisting this into somehow being my fault. I don't want him trying to claim I had an affair or something, so I want to get the truth out before he can twist this. I'm doing okay. I'm tired, but yet I feel almost jittery and off-kilter. I keep looking over my shoulder and monitoring what I say even when I don't really need to anymore. Hopefully that will fade soon. My work is covering the cost of the hotel, and I'm working on getting my other things in order. I also need to find a new GP as I want to get a full test just to make sure everything is okay. I don't know when my next update will be, probably when the divorce papers are filed or if we have to go to court to push them through. I will try to keep my head up, but it feels like I'm in a whirlwind or something with so many things to do and think about. I kinda thought it would be easier once I got out of the house, but while the fear is smaller, somehow the number of tasks only seems to have grown. Update 4. Firstly, I'm working on getting an apartment still and have applications in at 3 different places and will hopefully hear back from them soon. I'm still going into work here at the new location, so I don't have to worry about burning through my emergency savings completely. I've gotten a lot of emails from Alex, his family, and our old friend group asking question after question. I have only sent one return email to Alex, explaining that I don't believe we are truly compatible, and it is best we separate now. That his treatment of me when I'd done nothing to deserve as such was just as much of a deal breaker as cheating was for him. I ended the email with the statement that I would not be contacting him further and anything else he needed to pass on to me or vice versa would be done through my lawyer. For his family and friends, I just typed up one email outlining everything that had happened and why I left. I told them I wished them no ill will, but that such treatment of his wife and partner was not acceptable. That should Alex get remarried in the future, I wish they would help support both partners and not just Alex. Alex, from what my lawyer told me, was livid when he was served. The sheriff actually ended up booking him for assault on an officer and menacing due to the threats he was shouting. His father bailed him out in a few hours, but with the testimony of the sheriff, my lawyer believes I have a very good chance at getting a restraining order. Alex, upon returning to the house, apparently lost his temper again, breaking the dining table into pieces as well as the TV, and putting several holes in the walls. At least that's what one of the emails from one of our friends reported as Alex called him to help him clean up the mess. My lawyer already has pictures of the house I took, with timestamps as evidence nothing had been damaged by me. My friend reported that Alex tried to claim I'd been the one to trash the house, but the holes in the wall were at head height. Alex is 6'3", and I'm 5'4", so he knew that was false. Either way, taking the pictures definitely will help me, so again, thank you everyone here for the advice because I never would have thought of that on my own. My work won't share details of where I am, as I do work with some higher-end clientele who value security and that information won't be gossiped about, and no, I'm not some stripper or escort. I deal with contracts, notary and business management. As such, even if Alex tried to use my work to find me, he wouldn't succeed. Update 5. It's been a little bit, and I thought I'd answer some questions before giving my update. It may be a while after this until things change. Firstly, no, I didn't bring my car. The public transport here is good enough to use without needing one. I have secured an apartment, and the building has good security. You need a keycard to enter, and there is a security guard at a desk right by the entrance to the building. As part of my contract, I gave them a photo of Alex and his family so that even in the off chance they do find me, they won't be let in. The responses I got from the emails varied. His family said I was overreacting, and that I owe Alex an apology for the problems this has caused him. The pending criminal charges puts him at risk of losing his job if he's convicted. Alex sent a long email, apologizing and pleading for me to come home. He said he was worried for me, that he is willing to go to therapy if it will appease me. He wants us to remain together, and he didn't think leaving was an appropriate response to his genuine concern and worry for my health and safety. The friends gave somewhat lacking replies, saying that they didn't think Alex was ever going to hurt me and that I shouldn't be letting my imagination run away wild. As much as I want to say I was surprised by the lack of support, I'm honestly not. He intends to fight the divorce. I am letting my lawyer handle it, and I am also pursuing a protective order as well. Once I got approved for my apartment, I also froze my credit. I've changed my phone carrier and number, as well as making sure none of my documents list Alex as next of kin or POA. Some have asked why I was so paranoid about Alex and his possible future actions. The answer for that actually is somewhat simple: my grandmother. I love that woman to bits. As a teen, she explained why my grandfather was never around. He was extremely abusive and manipulative, and her generation didn't allow divorce really. She wouldn't have been able to buy a house or get a good enough job to support her and my mother on her own. As such, she endured it, shielded my mom as she could until my grandfather died. When I felt like I may have been overreacting, I remembered how she'd said she'd always wished she'd been able to see grandfather for what he was early on when she may have been able to annul the marriage. I don't know when I'll update again, maybe when the divorce goes through or if something big happens, but until then, I'm just trying to keep my head above the water. Update 6. It's been a month since my previous update, and I wanted to share some of what's been going on in the meantime. The divorce is proceeding, but even though I don't need him to agree, and he's not, it means I have to go through the courts to get it approved. As such, it could be upwards of 6 months to push it through even though I'm filing without attempting to claim property, alimony or compensation. I just want a clean break and separation. Alex has attempted to use our friends to reach out to me, as he doesn't want to use my lawyer for communication. He's saying it's disrespectful and cowardly to hide behind my lawyer and not meet him face to face. Alex wrote me a letter that he did pass off to my lawyer, but the contents were him justifying his actions and claiming that in today's time it is dangerous for women to be on their own, which is why he was so intent on trying to keep me safe from harm. He wanted me to understand that he was trying to protect me as best he could and was hurt that I would just lie to him and hide my actions from him related to my dissatisfaction with our marriage and my moving. I didn't reply, because at no point did he apologize. All he did was turn everything around on me as I was being overly dramatic, emotional and cowardly. There was a second letter with Alex's from my cell. Her letter was honestly disturbing and completely justified my misgivings regarding approaching her in any kind of professional capacity. She spent 5 paragraphs detailing how Ariel's abusive relationship looked like and that Alex was the furthest thing from abusive. The details she included were all related to financial abuse and physical abuse, nothing like what Alex had been doing. She stated that my attempts to smear her brother's name for attention and clout made me the abuser, not him. I haven't really been able to process that, admittedly. Part of me can't help but wonder if she's right. I mean, I blindsided him by leaving as I did and am refusing to speak with him at all. My old boss recommended that I look into getting into therapy after I moved, and I think I need to. I've had a hard time adjusting to being on my own. I keep censoring myself and haven't even gone out to eat yet. I always end up worrying about what if someone sees me. What if I get in trouble for spending my money on something frivolous? My lawyer is continuing to fight for the divorce, and I shouldn't need to be physically present in court. Any meetings needed between me and the judge can be done via Zoom. I'm trying to avoid confrontation with Alex and his family for now as much as I can and pass both letters to my lawyer in case he needs them. Our friends are mostly trying to avoid taking sides still, and I'm honestly approaching the point of just letting them go as well. I'm tired of fighting for them to understand at this point. I don't know if anything is going to happen, so my next update may not be until around mid-November, depending on how long it takes to push the divorce through. Work is going well, and it's helpful to have something familiar to anchor my day-to-day life when so much has changed and is changing even now. We annulled our engagement because my fiancé valued friendship more than love when I asked his best man to wear a tuxedo. I, 26, am getting married to Mark, 28, a handsome, responsible, intelligent man with a kind heart and a great sense of humor. My sister Jennifer, 23, is going to be his best man. Jennifer is best friends with my husband Mark, 26. He's known her more than twice as long as he's known me. We only really met and talked at any length about 3 years ago or so. They were co-workers together at her high school job, and she's been a part of his gaming group since then. They went to the same college, and they're co-workers again now working for his friend John's, 42, company. Mark was in college for the better part of a decade getting 2 undergraduate degrees and his PhD, and Jennifer ended up doing the same major as him, likely due to his encouragement. She's thinking about her master's in the same field, but they both work full-time now. In addition to being co-workers and playing Dungeons and Dragons together, they also game online, and they hang out all the time. They've gone to conventions together, either as part of a group, or just the two of them. They do local classes and events together, and Mark helps Jennifer with her photography and editing. While she has a solid full-time job she likes, Jennifer still has aspirations of being a model, influencer. She loves fashion, and she's also into cosplay. After we got engaged, we were at a family dinner, and I was talking to Mark about the wedding party, and I mentioned that even though I have 2 sisters, I wanted my own best friend Helen, 26, to be my maid of honor. Mark said that was great, because he actually wanted to ask Jennifer to be his best man. Jennifer immediately and enthusiastically agreed. Being a female best man is just the kind of thing she'd love. Obviously, even if that meant she wouldn't be one of my bridesmaids. She also knew that between our other sister and some of my friends I had too many people who needed to be bridesmaids, and Mark was worried about being short on groomsmen. This was all fine and well until later on when we were talking about what people were going to wear. I picked out my dream wedding dress, and I coordinated the bridesmaid dresses, and Mark was going to have his groomsmen, most of which were other gaming buddies in tuxedos. I had to talk him out of putting them in cosplay/rent-fair stuff. However, Jennifer was going to wear a dress. Jennifer is a very tall, very attractive woman, and to be perfectly frank, she has a large chest. The dress that she wants to wear was designed by one of her friends online, and while it's not white or anything, it's mostly red and black and pretty well matches the other groomsmen, and it's formal and fancy. It definitely shows off her figure. I wouldn't say in a slutty way at all, but it just does. She would also, as the best woman, stand out from the other men on the groom's side, especially in the heels she wanted to wear with the dress. After dropping a few hints here and there and broaching the subject of each side of the wedding party matching in women's tuxedos, I gently requested that Mark have Jennifer wear a tuxedo rather than the dress and shoes she wanted and he had previously liked. When they gave me pushback, I pointed out to Jennifer that she might be too exposed, or she might distract people with such a flashy dress. Jennifer gave me a dirty look and said half under her breath, "Are you fucking serious?" And before I could react, she just said, "Fine, fuck it, you're the bride, I'll wear the fucking tuxedo." Mark sighed and half said some things about it being ridiculous, but then when I asked him what he said he just said, "Okay, it's whatever, it's fine." Since then, Mark and Jennifer have been passive-aggressively making fun of my concerns, with them doing things like Mark comedy ogling her chest, or her making all sorts of boob jokes. She's done things like ostentatiously covering up her chest with her hands when she moves past people while saying things like, "Gotta guard the girls, wouldn't wanna knock anyone over." Both her and Mark keep making fake Freudian slips about her chest or her figure, and Jennifer even pretends to lose her balance and fall over because her boobs were too heavy. They pretty much just do this when I'm around. They seem to think it's hilarious. They've made it very well known that Jen is really disappointed about not getting to wear the dress and that her seamstress friend is upset about it too, and Mark has seemed a bit distant and disinterested in wedding planning. I was looking over some tuxedos for women and making some suggestions to Jennifer about ones that aren't too tight in the chest or hips, and she just showed me the one that she had already picked out and said, "Is this fine, or did you want to further micromanage my specific tuxedo?" We started to get into a fight, and she accused me of being a bridezilla. When I told her she was being a bad sister, she said that she wasn't the one who was being body shamed and told what to wear. I told her my requests weren't body shaming, and she said that they were the same thing. My parents completely took Jennifer's side and said that I should just let her wear the dress. Obviously, she showed it to them too, and they thought it was beautiful. They like her friend too, and her friend has done clothing and costumes with her before. My father said that I should at least stop bothering her about the tuxedo if I'm going to make her wear one, and then I should just let her go with the one she picked. The one she wants though is very high visual impact and it is also very tailored. She said she can match it to the colors, but I feel like she'd still stand out. When I tried to get Mark to weigh in on this, he just said, "It's your wedding, do whatever you want." I guess I'll tell her to do whatever you want. And I obviously don't feel like he's very invested. I feel like he's not on the same page, but he just doesn't want to argue. He's always like that. Even though we both have good jobs, both Jennifer and I still live at home with our parents, because housing is ridiculous, and it's been awkward around each other. I've been staying over at Mark's a lot over the last year, and I was supposed to be officially moving in, but he's been kind of cool and passive about it recently. Everyone seems to be acting like I'm the asshole here, even though Mark and Jennifer are the ones being passive-aggressive and unreasonable. I almost feel I should have just made Jennifer a bridesmaid right off the bat or told Mark that it didn't make sense for him to have female groomsmen. Am I the asshole for wanting my husband's best man to just wear a normal tuxedo? Update 1, there is not going to be a wedding. John, 42, of all people, Mark's 28 boss and gaming buddy noticed my post, as it got way more attention than I ever expected. We've only ever met a couple of times and hardly ever talked before, but he reached out to me with, "This is John, LOL, call me." So I called him from the parking lot after work. John says he's been married for about 20 years, and he's tried to give Mark relationship advice. He doesn't think we're a good match. He told me that I should talk to Mark and that Mark has been unhappy with our relationship and extremely unhappy with the wedding planning, even to the point that it's a running gag amongst him and his friends. I got into it a bit with John, because to be fair to me, Mark's ideas have been ridiculous. Just some of the things he asked for, and which John, Jennifer, 23F, and his buddies thought would be cool. He wanted the wedding party to have custom swords, daggers and amulets. He wanted them to have the swords during the ceremony, and he thought people would like fantasy amulets. Mark had told me that John was willing to pay for the bridesmaid dresses if we had them done by Jennifer's costumer friend. I told him no, because I wanted normal, nice bridesmaids dresses from someplace reputable and that the bridesmaids could buy them themselves. John told me that he had offered this as a bit of a bet with Mark. Mark wanted to serve meat at the wedding. He said that his friend, John, could provide it and that he made meat in his basement and had tons of it. I obviously said no, because why would I want meat at my wedding, never mind some guy's basement meat. John got a laugh out of this at the time, and talked to me, because he's a nerd who likes to laugh at his own jokes. Apparently, he's very proud of his basement mead, and they like to make toast with it. Basement mead has apparently become a running gag in their games, as John insisted on telling me. Frankly, John seemed kind of tickled with himself just because he was speaking with me. Mark wanted the band at the wedding to play classical covers of video game and superhero music. Mark wanted the reception to have a jester, who would wander around doing magic tricks and asking people riddles. Some lady that Mark and his friends know asked if she could be an elf at our wedding and wear her forest gown, and Mark said he'd ask me, and he described it as some kind of green Greek toga dress with leaves and elven writing on it, and that she'd have elf ears. It's a wedding, not a costume party, so I don't even know why he would ask that. I mentioned this stuff to John, and he recognized all of it and some more things to add besides, because Mark would always vent to them about the wedding plans, and John just agreed along, saying that I was constantly shooting down all of Mark's ideas. The point is that all of Mark's ideas were completely ridiculous and that I wanted to have a wedding and not a Halloween party. John laughed when I brought this up to him and said that these ideas were awesome and that I was just being too boring. John said that he thought we weren't a good match and that he's told Mark that he needs to talk to me. I asked him if he thought Mark and Jennifer were a good match, and he just said yes. I asked if there had been anything between them, and he said no. He said he's 100% certain they've never hooked up, because Mark doesn't have the poker face for it, especially with as much as him and the other group members ribbed them over it. He said that Mark is too oblivious for his own good and that the week after her 18th birthday Jennifer said, pretty much straight to Mark, "I'm 18, so you can fuck me now." And Mark just laughed it off as a joke. It does sound like something she'd say because Jennifer does love making inappropriate sexual jokes. John thought there was more to it though. They've had their characters date each other in games. He said they've been the very model of chastity since Mark has been dating me. Once at an event Jennifer was supposed to kiss Mark, but instead she kissed the palm of her hand and then had him kiss her palm. John is fully confident that neither of them would cheat. I went over to Mark's house, because he hadn't called or texted in a while, and he basically confirmed everything John said. Mark said that I stressed him out when I was over, and he wasn't sure about me moving in because thinking about it gave him anxiety. He didn't like any of my ideas for our house. It was his childhood home, and he's resistant to changing anything. He just has his stuff everywhere and wherever. He kept trying to talk about giving me some rooms, or some space when it's supposed to be our home where all of the space belongs to both of us. He was extremely frustrated about the wedding planning and he felt like he didn't have a say. He said the dress Jennifer wanted to wear was just about the final straw because I told him he could pick the outfits for the groomsmen and I told him Jen could be in a dress as long as it matched. She really loves the dress, and she got it from her friend. She and John and apparently all of his buddies warned him that I'd find some way to have a problem with it. He says that I talk him in circles whenever he tries to choose or change anything, even though all of his suggestions are ridiculous. And he said he'd just about given up caring by the time I complained about the dress, so he didn't bother fighting about it. He said it upset him the way I was body-shaming Jennifer about her figure and her breasts. He thought I was being jealous and controlling, and that I had been a bridezilla ever since he proposed. When I asked him why he even proposed, if I apparently give him anxiety and he doesn't even want me to move in with him, he said he felt like he was pressured to either propose or break up, and he hoped things would get better and that he didn't know if he had a good enough reason to break up. When I told him that I never pressured him to propose, he said that all of my friends and family know that I consider it a goal to get married before I'm 30, and he brought up a document on his phone where he had taken notes about what kind of proposal I wanted from all the times I had talked about it. He said that he started the document because of how obviously important it was to me to have a perfect proposal and how often I talked about what I wanted. He proposed because he felt like he had to either marry me or dump me if I was going to have time for my plans. I don't think there's anything wrong with having a timeline for your life, and I wanted to start having kids by my late 20s or early 30s at the latest. I mentioned all of this to Mark again, and he said that that was fine for me, but that he was kind of on the fence about when to have kids, and he mentioned that Jennifer isn't sure about having kids at all and certainly isn't in any hurry about them, but I told him that doesn't have anything to do with anything and that Jennifer is just being short-sighted. I asked him if anything had happened between him and Jennifer, and he said no, and I believe him. I asked him why he wasn't dating Jennifer, and he said that at first she was too young, and then he was seeing someone, and then he was dating me, and he said that he values his friendship with her more than anything. He said that his friendship with Jennifer was worth not getting to be with her that way, and that she's too attractive to want to be with him. Apparently, the only reason Mark even started dating me is because he tried flirting with me at a family party we were at, and he said I seemed into him. He doesn't think of himself as handsome, but he is, and he's got his PhD, a great job, and his own house at 28. He's definitely a catch. He didn't agree, and he said he's only ever dated his high school prom date, a girl who was kind of his girlfriend until she graduated and left, and me. Mark apologized and said that he wanted to put a hold on any more wedding or moving plans, and that he wasn't sure about the relationship. I had already started crying, but then I broke down and he apologized again. He said he was sorry for messing up my plans, and that he kept hoping things would get better. I left as soon as I felt like I could drive. By the time I got home, Mark had already texted Jen, "Your sister is crying. Sorry," and the two of them had been on the phone the whole time, and of course my mom knew and she tried to comfort me, but I could just tell she wanted to say "I told you so," because she had been warning me I was going to drive Mark away, and she thought he was better with Jennifer too. Jennifer said that she tried really hard to have this work out, Because she just wants Mark to be happy and that she had tried inviting me to gaming and for Christmas before last she bought me a Switch with games Mark likes and that she was sorry stuff happened this way. She accused me of not really liking or caring about Mark and just wanting a generic husband. When I told her that wasn't fair, she mentioned the same stuff from the wedding planning and a bunch of other stuff from our relationship that she said made Mark feel ignored or suffocated. She said that the only reason I liked him was because he ticked boxes and always gave in and let me have my way. We started arguing, but our mom stepped in before we could get into it too bad. I asked Jennifer about what this meant for her and Mark and she said he is absolutely her best friend and nothing is ever going to change that and that she loves him. When I asked how she loves him, she just said that's not a discussion she wants to have right now. Our mom said everyone needed to cool off and that was enough for Jen to step away and drop the subject. One of the commenters on my original post asked why I was marrying my sister's boyfriend, and my mom asked very nearly the same thing. She questioned how I had started dating Mark just about as soon as his age gap with Jennifer stopped being awkward and she implied I shouldn't have been dating him in the first place. That's not fair at all. It's not like he's her property. And Jennifer can clearly just go get whatever man she wants. It's not like she had any kind of claim on a man just for knowing him. Even while she was trying to comfort me and saying that things will be all right, my mom wouldn't stop implying that I was wrong for going after Mark in the first place or criticizing me for how the relationship went. She said that Mark wasn't the man for me, and I could tell she meant that he belonged with someone like Jennifer, as if I'm not good enough or what I want doesn't matter. And then I caught her talking to Jen about how things should be fine and how she should try not to be too mad at me as if I was the one in the wrong or I should be apologizing to her. Jennifer just kind of went on like normal and went ahead and went to go game with Mark and her friends the next day. I know they've been chatting online like normal. I gave Jennifer Mark's ring to give back to him, and then I had a missed call from him while I was in the shower and a text that said, "Okay, I guess we are broken up then. I'm sorry. I don't know if I messed this up or if everyone else were the assholes here. Sorry this was so long. A lot of stuff has come out. I feel like I'm definitely not going to get married by the time I'm 30. Related comments. Comment 1. Everyone in this situation is at fault, but I feel bad for OOP because her own mother accused her of stealing her sister's soulmate just because she accepted his invitation to date. The fiancé approached her first, so why is it wrong that she accepted? While it might be true that OOP wanted to meet certain goals and saw him as a way to achieve them, her boyfriend isn't her sister's property. He asked her out and then proposed. Why is she being villainized for thinking they were in a mutual relationship? Comment 2. Seriously, Mark is the biggest villain in this story. He essentially said, "I have a crush on this underage girl at work. I'm going to befriend her and then date her older sister because she's the closest approximation I can get." He told OP he loved her and wanted to spend their lives together when he proposed. But behind her back, he made fun of her with his friends, knowing he'd rather be with someone else. He wasted her time and used her plans to marry by 30 against her. Nobody in this situation is nice, but Mark caused most of the suffering. Comment 3. Everyone in this situation is exhausted. Both people in the relationship aren't compatible, and those around them aren't great either. It's truly one of those, everyone sucks here moments. After being married for nearly 35 years, I discovered that my husband had a side piece for 2 years. I was devastated and decided to divorce. I've been married almost 35 years, yes, to the same person. And while it hasn't been perfect, it's been alright. Kids, dog, white fence. I've got those. Our personal lives have suffered somewhat. I went from being a virgin on my wedding night to stepping out of my comfort zones to please him sexually. Household of 3, to where Saturday, it will be 6 years since we've been intimate at all. For the longest time, I thought he was having an emotional affair with his male friend, that he had fished with, but had become ill with cancer, because he would drop everything and anything for him, including plans we had, for him. Plus, there were a few texts that, while not sexual, were more than friendship. But for some reason, while I was hurt, I was not threatened. I know he is extremely ill, there is no physical relationship going on, his time is short, and once this was out of his system, he would be back to his normal self and me, his wife. I'm really sorry if my words sound crude, that's not how I want them to sound. But once he passed, my husband would be back to me. So I was gone this past week, dog sitting, house sitting for my sister, and got home last night to check the mail. There was a blank envelope with everything typed. Inside was a short note, picture above. I know who the female is, it's one of his friends. I'm completely devastated. To me, a woman is harder to compete with. What does she have do that I don't? I decided to get healthy and lose weight. I've lost over 130 pounds. I don't hear anything from him. I went to the doctor last week, dressed nicely, and he told me I was embarrassed, that his wife was running around town looking like a whore, with her tits hanging out. I had a slight off-the-shoulder white eyelet with dark jeans. Since finding this out, I've become obsessed with finding evidence. I stalk her Facebook, their call logs. He calls her an average of 68 times a day with calls lasting 15 minutes. I'll drive by her house. I'll type and delete her name, phone number, address, wanting to confront both of them, blame her, blame him. Wonder what she has that I don't, how I can fix this. Do I want to fix it, does he? What should I do? Where do I go? How? I've cried for 2 days now. I can't stand to look at him, and I'm afraid to talk to him. Update 1. So after a few days of crying and feeling miserable, I became obsessed with finding more information. Mind you, this all came to light last Sunday. Before that, I was walking around in an ignorant state of not knowing. So I started scanning phone logs, daily phone calls to and from her 6 to 7 plus times a day, 20-40 minutes each. I had a typo in my first post. I went through his office, nightstand, etc. I don't know exactly what I was looking for, but I was looking for something. I would drive by her house when he would leave. In other words, I was going crazy. And by Wednesday, I broke. I was tired of him acting like it's a normal day, that there was nothing going on. I could not take it anymore, and I first wanted to talk to her. So I took off in my car, drove to the dog park, empty. So I drove to her house, started pounding on her security door, and ringing her doorbell. She has a ring, telling her to open her effing door, and if you're woman enough to FK a married man, you should be woman enough to talk to his wife. This went on for maybe 10 minutes or so. She didn't answer. I texted my husband that we needed to talk and that, I know. My sister is on the phone with me trying to calm me down and get me to leave her place before the police are called. In the 3 minutes, yes, he picked someone in our community, it took me to get home. Not only had she called him, she also sent him the video. So I confronted him, somewhat. It was more like he gaslit me the entire time. He said, "Get your ass in the house, I can't believe you did something so effing stupid," etc. And turned it around on me. "You're always sitting on the couch unless your sister invites you out." And he didn't deny he was with her, "It's none of your business." When I asked if he would stop seeing her, he said he would not give her up. She is a good friend of his. And the biggest smack in my face, he wants me to apologize to her. For embarrassing her in her neighborhood. And I guess she is talking about filing a restraining order against me. So Thursday and Friday, I finished my pity party, and Saturday, I started doing things I never thought I would have to do on my 35th anniversary. I reached out to divorce attorneys. They were closed but filled out the forms for consultations. I also started a resume and applied for jobs, but after not working for 20 plus years, what kind of work am I going to be qualified for? I stayed at my sister's this weekend. I needed the change of scenery between his attitude, the not happening anniversary, and the funky feeling. I needed a break. Update 2. So it's been about a month since I found out about his affair. It still sucks. And I'd like to say I've totally gotten over him, but one doesn't turn off feelings like a light switch. At least I don't. And sometimes, I think, maybe we can fix this, but then he does something awful again, and I'm back on track with my plans and goals. So I've set goals for myself and have been working towards them. My first one, get a job. I was a housewife for 99% of my marriage. Not only did I get one, I found 2 that I can work at the same time. I opened a secret account, not in my name, and am stashing all my extra money in it. He controls all the house money tightly, so I have to get creative. He knows about one job, not the other one though. I've gone back to school to get my degree, geared towards what I'm doing. So far, it's going well. I'm remaining positive and pushing forward, even when he gets negative towards me. "You're just going to quit, you will flunk out," etc. I am saving for a small place, hopefully a little ADU or an apartment, that will allow my little dogs. Once the apartment is lined up, then I will file for divorce. I need to make sure I have a safe place to go because he will become nasty once served. So far, things are calm here. I don't ask about her, although they still speak daily, and I'm sure they are hanging out. In our community, it's like he is trying to rub my nose in it. The thing is, I'm not letting him know or see that it's bothering me at all, which in turn is bugging the crap out of him. So he threatened to take my phone away. Okay, fine, I went and bought a cheap burner phone, just in case he does. So now he has switched to being nice. He has bought parts for my car, paid the labor, bought my scrubs and equipment I need for work and school. He asked for a list and bought it. It's times when he's nice, I think there might be hope for us. But as long as she is in the picture, nope. Then he turns back into the ass again with empty threats, knocking down my confidence, and I'm back to counting months until I can move. Update 3. I'm still on my phone and just worked an overnight shift, so I'm tired. We are in the month of June and quite a bit has transpired, some good, some not. I finally broke down and told my kids. Those were extremely difficult calls to make, and I told them everything. I took responsibility for my part and admitted I could have done things better. My kids, all older, said that while not perfect, I did my best with what I had, and that didn't excuse his cheating. My eldest wanted to come out and confront his dad and the other woman. I told him it wasn't worth it. My second son, the thinker, didn't say much but was deep in thought. My third son said, "It's about time, with the way he talked to you and treated you. I hope you're thinking about leaving." I was honestly on the fence. He would flip-flop between wanting to work on us and his actions saying differently. The past 2 weeks have been the worst. Since he has been using my son's car, my son put a tracking device in it. Yes, I have access to it, and no, he does not know about it. He would tell me he was going to one place and go straight to the other woman's house. If I asked where he was, he would lie to my face. I just kept notes until I couldn't anymore. Father's Day. I had worked the night before, got off work at 8 a.m., texted him what he wanted for dinner that night, stopped at the store, bought everything, came home, got it started, and tried to take a nap. Mind you, he did nothing whatsoever on Mother's Day. He woke me up to borrow $40 to go to a sporting goods store. I said fine and reminded him dinner was in an hour to an hour and a half. 2 hours later, he was not back. I checked the tracking. He went straight to her house and hadn't moved. So I did a drive-by. His car was parked in the garage, she was parked outside, so I came back home. I was more upset for my son. I texted him, "You need to come home, we need to talk. I know you're not at the sports store." Nothing. After 30 minutes, his car still had not moved, so I called her. Of course, she didn't answer. I left a voicemail. "I know my husband is at your house, you win, I'm done. It's obvious he wants to be with you. I'm tired of the lies, his bull, he doesn't want someone who has loved and fought for him for 35 years. I'm done, come get his dog and his stuff, you've won." 10 minutes later, he came in with a Walmart bag and said he went to Walmart and a friend made tacos for him. I dished up servings for my son and me, then threw the rest of the meal in the trash. He gave me an attitude because she feels threatened now that I called her. She has to change her number and might lose clients. I didn't threaten her. I told him if he wasn't happy here, he knew where the door was and was welcome to use it. He was quiet all week but still a jerk, and his only concern was seeing that woman. I had melanoma removed and needed a driver, so he took me. When I got in the car, not one word, not "How are you? How did it go? Are you okay?" Nope, all he said was, "I'm hungry." And it was the 30th anniversary of losing my sister to melanoma, so I was extra sensitive. Little things were just adding up. He was forgetting things I needed or had asked for. I was at the bottom of his list. On our son's birthday, he couldn't even wait for him to blow out the candles before he went to her house. This last Sunday, he was going through the kitchen cabinets, pulling out some soup and said he was going to take it to a couple who had been stranded down the road for a couple of weeks in a broken-down RV. So I gathered a few more items, and he left but left the bag of stuff on the counter. I checked and yep, he went right to her house. This was it, my last bit of energy for this marriage. I texted him again. "I don't understand why you need to lie. There is no dog park, hiking trail, fishing spot, sporting goods store, broken-down RV, nor Walmart on Bunker Hill. Why not be honest and tell me you're going to her house? It's obvious, regardless of what you're saying, you don't want to work on our marriage. You have and are choosing her over your family." And I sent it. I tried to call him. He didn't answer, so I texted. "Didn't think you would answer." Not even 5 minutes later, he came screeching into the driveway, slamming into the house screaming, "What the F is wrong with you, you fing mother fing bee?" I'm sure if I was in the same room as him, he would have hit me. I told him I'm tired of him lying to me. Just tell me he's going to the whore's house. He's been going there the entire time and yet still lies about it. Doesn't he think if I'm questioning where he is I know? He called me a few choice names and ignored me the rest of the night. I'm sure my neighbors loved it. I went yesterday, Monday, to file for divorce and got bad news. Because he is a 1099 employee and hasn't technically worked in almost 2 years, although my bills are paid, I'm not in his bank accounts. I never have been. I've always had to ask for money from him. Because he stopped me from doing his taxes 3 years ago, saying they were too complicated for me, If I were to file for divorce right now and ask for alimony, he could immediately file to lower it, and the judge could agree with him. My lawyer suggested waiting 3 months to file, as he is now working again, started this week and submitted paper bits. I'm to collect as much evidence as I can in the meantime. The lawyer was impressed with what I had so far. So, I'm planning and playing it cool till September. Relevant comments. Comment 1, I know this hurts now, but you will be better off without someone draining your life. I don't know much about this, but I think you should get a second opinion from another lawyer. 1099 forms still count as proof of income. They might be able to subpoena those and his full tax records, even if he hasn't filed them. Reply, he owns his own business and gets a 1099 from the company he subcontracts through. I haven't seen a tax return in 3 years since we file separately. I try to look when he's not home, but his office is a mess. I'll keep searching because there must be something. OOP on why she needs alimony. My children are all grown, and I just started working again 2 months ago after spending most of our marriage as a housewife, taking care of him and our kids. My youngest son is 20 but has special needs and mentally is about 12. Earlier, when I found out about the affair, I would have done anything to get him back. Now. No, I don't want him back. I deserve better. OOP on securing legal documents. All those documents have been moved to a safe place since April. OOP explains why she is waiting until September for alimony. I've lasted this long and honestly, if I left now, I couldn't afford a decent place with my son, even with my job. After everything I've done, including caring for his mom, helping with his business and running the home, I deserve it. I just want what's fair to get a safe place for my son. According to the lawyer, it could mean the difference between $500 a month and $4,500 a month. These are rough figures, but it's a substantial difference.